I've been all over the place since we last spoke, and coming up, I'll tell you about transportation issues I had in every location. Stick with me.
From Studio B in Swarthmore, this is iCantCU. Now, here's David.
Hello there, and welcome back to another episode of iCantCU, your window into a world where blindness doesn't dictate ability. My name is David, at David Benj on all the socials. I really do appreciate you joining me for this episode of iCantCU. I'm in a cleaner, more tidied up Studio B, and I'd love your comments on these sunglasses that I'm wearing. If you're watching, maybe I'll put this in the, maybe I'll use this picture of me somewhere as the cover art for the podcast. If you're just listening on audio, we'll see what I can do with that. Jane purchased them for me. The link is in the description. They're from Amazon, so you know what that means. It's an affiliate link. You don't pay more, but I get a little something if you buy them. Or if you think they are the worst things you've ever seen, just buy something else while you're there. I'll still get credit as long as you buy them right after you click to take a look at these. So buy a new TV, buy a new computer, buy a brand new camera. I'll get some credit, and I do appreciate it. Thank you so much, and thank you to Jane. I picked these up when I was in New York City the second time over the last couple of weeks. So let's start off. It was a very busy month, and I am pretty tired right now, and we are in the home stretch to the NFB of Pennsylvania State Convention. I'm going to have a link in the description. If you own a business or know of a business that would like to sponsor the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania, nfbofpa.org/sponsor, and there's all sorts of levels you can do. You've got to act quick if you want to do one of the higher levels because we have to print the materials that your logo and information would go in if you're at the higher tier. If you're at the lower tier, up to about $500, it's just a backlink to your website and a blurb from the stage of the convention. And I do appreciate that. So if you have any questions, please reach out to me, iCantCUpodcast@gmail.com. So let's start off with my first trip. And again, I'm so glad I was in Hershey yesterday. I was in New York City Monday and Tuesday of this week. So today it was nice to have a down day. And it was pouring down rain most of the day here. So it wasn't even a be outside and walk around type of day with Ziggy. He went out once and was just drenched. It took him hours to dry. We'll start off a few weeks ago on a Friday afternoon. I was going to the Dancing in the Dark to be Dancing in the Light fundraiser from the Greater Lehigh Valley chapter of the National Federation of the Blind of Pennsylvania. And wow, that is a mouthful. But the plan was to travel from my house to Lansdale, and then I was going to get a ride for the rest of the way there. It's about 2 hours from my house. It's around Allentown, Bethlehem. If you're familiar or know that area, there's an airport called Allentown Bethlehem Easton, or ABE, if you're familiar there. That was the plan. Well, to go from Swarthmore to Lansdale, I would have had to change trains and would have had to leave a little bit earlier than the time that I left. I found out there's another train line that's close to me, which I sometimes use, where if I picked up the train in Ridley Park, I could just get on that train. I wouldn't have to wait around, and I would go straight to Lansdale, go through Center City. It's supposedly two different lines because it changes once you hit Center City, Philadelphia. And I would have just been on that train, gotten off in Lansdale, and then gotten the ride. Well, I had to take a rideshare to that. The one in Swarthmore, I could have taken a bus right to the train station, and it would have cost, the bus, I think, is $1.50 or something like that with my disability discount card. And so I took a ride share from my house over to Ridley Park. It's not far, but it's not walkable, and there's not one bus to take it. It was a connect the dots type of thing with buses to get over there. So I took the ride share. I don't remember what it cost. I want to say around $15. Not terrible, but it was terrible because I waited at the station. I got there around 2:30, 2:35. Train was due at 2:45 or 2:50. I waited and I kept checking, and I did have the Meta Ray-Bans on at that point. So I was talking to the glasses. There was another guy waiting. He said, "Oh, what does the schedule say?" I said, "It's on time," it said, which it did say. We kept waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, after I was there for about 45 minutes and had swiped in probably within 5 or 10 minutes of getting to the station, they made an announcement that the train was canceled. The next train did not go to Lansdale. At Center City, it became a different line and went somewhere I didn't need to go. So that was an issue because I had to then figure out, how am I going to get to Easton from Ridley Park? So I've wasted the $15 for the original rideshare. I did the only thing I could, which was call another rideshare. Well, a rideshare from Ridley Park to Easton during rush hour now was $138. And then, of course, it was a nice ride, so I tipped the person. I don't remember what I tipped them, but I paid about $150, $155 just to go there. Again, it's a fundraiser. I wanted to go. They were expecting me, and I was glad I went. Coming back, I took a ride share directly home. Now, it wasn't rush hour. It was 10 or 11 o'clock at night, so it was only $87. When I got in the car to come home, I was talking with the driver, and he said, "How much did this ride cost you?" I said, $87. He said, "I'm making $38 for this ride." And again, I don't think it was quite 2 hours because there obviously wasn't traffic at 10 or 11 o'clock at night. So I ended up getting his number to call if I ever needed any kind of long haul trips. I'm not going to call him to go someplace close, but for something like that, or if I had to go to King of Prussia or someplace further out than a normal Uber ride or Lyft ride. And I typically use Lyft more than Uber now because of one reason. Well, there's maybe two reasons. The main reason is Lyft allows you to put exactly where you need to be dropped off. Uber, if you say you have to go to, for example, I have a rheumatologist that I see at Riddle Hospital. Well, he's not in the hospital. They have an outpatient pavilion around back. Uber doesn't have that listed. Lyft, when you put Riddle Hospital, it gives you 5 choices or so: emergency room, main entrance, the healthcare section where Liz had a test done that I went over with her, and the outpatient. So I go right to the door. Easy. That's one of the reasons. Most times, Lyft is cheaper. Not all the times. And more importantly, most times, Lyft gets here a lot faster than Uber. Now, that didn't work the other day when I went to New York. I took a Lyft and I ordered it a little late, and it took 14 minutes for me to get the car. And I'll tell you more about waiting in a couple of minutes. The fundraiser itself is a great thing that they do, and they raise a lot of money for the chapter. They get a lot of local participation from the different supermarkets and ophthalmologists and things like that in the area. And they raise a lot of money. And it was a great event. They have an auction, they have raffles, and they have, most importantly, they had good food. And I had risotto. It was delicious. And dessert was delicious too. It was some sort of brownie with a scoop of vanilla ice cream on it. It was awesome. And they also had these very cool NFB cookies. And if you're familiar with the NFB logo, there is a circle that looks like a flower, but it's around, for lack of a better word, 6 people with white canes, but none of them are white and they're called Who's-Its, these people with the canes in the logo. There are, green, blue, orange, and red, I think. Not quite 100% on the colors, but that sort of mix of color. And some of them have a little bit of a gradient, it looks like to me. Again, check it out for yourself. Any NFB website, nfbfpa.org will have the logo up at the top. So if you have sight, you can go take a look at the logo. So it was a fun evening. I got to see some friends from the Lehigh Valley chapter and meet some new people from up there. And it's just a nice evening. It is a formal event. A semi-formal event. Now, the one issue I had, and I felt terrible, Liz wasn't home from school when I had to leave. So I put a suit on. I couldn't undo the shirt from the hanger So I knew if I couldn't undo the shirt from the hanger, there was no way I was going to be able to put it on and button it. So I just wore a mock turtle because it was cool out that day. So I wore a mock turtle. So it looked okay, but I really felt bad not wearing a tie. And I've done that to funerals because I've been the only one home. Now, what's weird was 2 weeks after that, I went to a funeral and Liz was home, so she could have helped me, but I was just out of the shower, so I was probably the best my hands were going to be that day. And I got dressed and I was able to undo the shirt and then button it up, except for the cuffs on the arms. I couldn't do that. Liz had to do that. But that wouldn't have been a big deal if I couldn't even get them because I'm going to be wearing the jacket the whole time. So I was glad that I was able to do that. I don't know. At this moment right now, I don't think I could do it. It also has to correspond too with when my medicine shot is, and it's, I take it every 4 weeks. So it was a week after I had taken the shot. So that might have been part of it as well. I took away a lot of great ideas for how to do things with the convention because, again, I'm chair of the NFBFPA State Convention this year. And again, very enjoyable. Glad I went. Again, it did cost me a couple of bucks to get there. It was good to be seen at, and it was good to support that chapter. The next day, I went to a Keystone chapter meeting at the Penn Museum, which I love going. It was just a very busy 5 days, and I'll tell you why as I move on here. I finally got mac and cheese again for the first time in probably 5 months from Landmark Americana. And Kenny, who is in our chapter, he always makes fun of me. He said, you ought to get some kickback for that, mentioning them all the time. Because I do mention it on Federation Focus as well. The next day was a shot day, and I had to take it earlier than I normally do because I had a 12:42 Amtrak train to Pittsburgh. Got on that train. That's about an 8-hour ride. It was actually going to Pittsburgh. It was a little less than 8 hours. Got to Pittsburgh, no issues. I was in Pittsburgh for the Patton Tech Adventures event that was held this year. It was held at the Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf. And I had our tablecloth. I had a suitcase full of all sorts of printed materials, braille cards and whatnot, and pens. And everybody makes fun when blind people hand out pens because they're useless to us. Because if we could even see what we were writing, we wouldn't be able to see to read it later on. But we hand them out because it has our URL on it and whatnot. So that's one of the things. And most of the folks that were at this event are sighted people or sighted people with blind students that are with them. Or maybe it's parents with their child or children who may be blind or low vision. And there was a guy that I talked to who I believe is in high school. I forget if he's in 10th or 11th grade. I had talked to him last year. He's a pretty smart kid, and he was telling me about going, I don't remember if he called it hiking, climbing. He went to Alaska to do this glacier walk, hike, climb, whatever it was, but he did that over the summer, which sounded very cool to me. And when somebody tells me things like that, and I think you got to hold on to something, it just makes my hands hurt even more. But it was great to be at that. It was one thing that I found, like I had found last year when I went to the same event. It wasn't held at the school last year. It was held at Patton's Pittsburgh office. The people in Pittsburgh are so unbelievably friendly. I just can't get over it. It is just unreal. There was a lunch break of about an hour or so. So I took a rideshare not too far away. There was a Wendy's. I figured, okay, I'll go to Wendy's. I'll get lunch. And when I ordered the rideshare to come back, it was going to be about 10 minutes. So I walked outside. It was a pretty nice day. I walked outside and I'm standing near the door. If I had an empty cup, I probably could have made a few bucks for the NFBFPA because 7 people walked in, 7 different people. One of them was an employee smoking not a cigarette about 10 feet away from me. And it wasn't a pipe or a cigar either. So you know what I mean. He went in and said hello as he walked past me. 5 of the 6 other people, the other customers that walked past me, said hello. And the first person that did, I didn't think they were talking to me. I was dictating on my phone. And this lady walked by and said hello. And I didn't know if I thought she was on her phone. I couldn't tell. Then I realized after a couple other people went by and said hello, that she was saying hello to me. Now, in a million years, you don't get 6 out of 7 people in Philadelphia to say hello to you. They may say some other things to you, like, get out of my way, you're blocking the door, whatever it might be. But I just couldn't believe it. And meanwhile, as I'm waiting for my rideshare, the guy's name was Steven. He texted me once and said, just getting gas, I'll be right there. I said, no worries, whenever. And then he said, I'm on my way, after he finished filling up. When he got there, I asked him if he was from the area, and he said, well, I live in Virginia now, but I grew up here. In fact, I grew up right near where I'm taking you right now. I said, oh, okay. So I said to him, are people really this friendly all around this city? He said, yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that. And we started talking about it. So just unbelievable how friendly folks are in Pittsburgh. Did the event. I was trying to go over to LAMP, which is in Pittsburgh. There are 2 libraries that cater to blind and low vision folks in the state. One is out west, run by the Carnegie Library System. One is in the east in Philadelphia. And we've had the folks from the Carnegie Library on White Canes Connect a couple of times. And I've always wanted to go in there. And so I messaged one person on Sunday night, knowing that they probably wouldn't get back to me until Monday. I asked what their hours were because Monday was Columbus Day when I was there. And I got an immediate response because this person was out of the office. So the other person, she said to contact. I emailed her first thing on Monday morning, figuring I'd have an answer by the time I was done with the patent event. And she never got back to me, so I assumed that it was closed, so I wasn't going to go over there. So I thought, what else am I going to do? When I booked my hotel room for this event, it was close to where I needed to be there, but I booked it because there were some things that I thought were in walking distance, and in reality they were. But here was my issue in Pittsburgh with transportation. And maybe it's not transportation, maybe it's fear. When I booked it and I found out where it was, I looked at all these different Hilton properties, and this one was right near this. I don't remember what the name of the area was, but it was waterfront something because my hotel was right on the Monongahela. In fact, my hotel window overlooked the Monongahela, which I later found out means falling banks in Lenape. And I thought, wow, this hotel is right up against the banks, and if these banks are falling, I'm going into the water. Because the hotel was right up against it. So I saw that there was an AMC 22 across the street and a whole bunch of restaurants and other stores and whatnot. I thought, okay, this is great. At least I'll have a choice of places to eat, and I can go over there either Sunday night when I get off the train. I could go watch a movie if I wanted to. Well, Sunday night there was a good football game on. I don't remember who it was. So I watched that. Same thing on Monday night. Football was on, so I watched that. In fact, there were 2 games on that night. When I looked at it using Google Earth, using the satellite view, I see a crosswalk right outside the hotel as you pull out onto the street from the hotel parking lot. And I thought, okay, I can walk across there. I just go to the left and walk down a block and then cut in, and then I'm back into where the shops and restaurants are. So as I'm leaving the hotel to go to Burgatory, which I highly recommend if you're in Pittsburgh, they had 4 or 5 different locations. And I guess it's like if you've ever been to, I can't compare it to Fuddruckers because it was way better than Fuddruckers, but basically a hamburger place that was a bar. And they had all sorts of burgers. I had this great burger that had a habanero jam on it that was so good. The waitress said to me, oh, it's really spicy. Are you sure you want that? And I said, yeah, I'm sure. I'm okay. Again, I don't know what it is when people look at me and say, oh, this guy can't handle that. So she said, here, I brought you some to try. And so I didn't have anything to dip in it. So I grabbed my fork and I started eating it. I'm like, oh, this is good. And then I saved some because I thought, oh, once my fries come, I can use it with my fries. I used it on some of the fries, and then I didn't have a lot left. So I squirted some some ketchup in there, mixed it around with one of the fries, and then I basically had a spicy ketchup. So that was awesome. But getting there was horrific. I go out to the curb and I look and I think, I see the light standards for the traffic lights, but I can't see the lights. I know that would they put up the poles without any lights and they go across the road? And so I'm standing there waiting to cross and nobody's stopping on this big road. 4 lanes plus a turning lane in the middle. And I'm waiting and finally I try to FaceTime Liz and she's not available. She doesn't answer. So I hear a car across the way make a left from where he was on that side street onto this road. I thought, okay, the light must be green. I hear a car coming up to my left and I hear him stopping. I'm like, okay, great. So I start walking across. And as I'm walking across, I hear some other cars coming and they don't sound like they're slowing down. And I get all the way across. And again, I'm looking and then Liz calls me, FaceTimes me back. And I said, I just crossed this road and I show her the road. I said, where are the lights? Where are the traffic lights? And I'm panning with my camera and I pan back and she said, well, there's a pole right in front of you. Just follow that up and then pan to the right. I do that. She said, there are no traffic lights on any of those poles and those overhangs. So I thought there is no way that I am walking back. It took me probably 10 minutes to walk there. And I thought, what am I going to do? And Liz said, well, just have somebody from the restaurant help you get back. I said, I am not asking for that. I will take a rideshare back. So I finished at Burgatory. I get a rideshare, which I probably could have been back in my hotel room and asleep if I wanted to go to sleep by the time I got in the rideshare and got back to the hotel. I get in the rideshare. The guy's name was Chris. And I was having trouble buckling. And he said, we're going to be there before you get that buckled. And we were. It was literally a 3-minute ride. But I crossed the road and I mentioned to him, I said, when I crossed, I thought that there was a traffic light because I heard it. And I explained just like I explained to you. And he said, oh, I see. He said, there's not a traffic light for probably a quarter to a half a mile that way and a quarter to a half a mile the other way. And I said, yeah, I couldn't do it, especially at this point now it's dark. And there was no way. I was in black, had a black T-shirt on, and I just was not going to do it. So the $8 that I spent on that Uber or Lyft, and I think it was a Lyft, but I'm not 100%, was worth it. Here was the kicker. I walked back into the hotel, and the guy who told me, yes, I just walk out and da-da-da-da-da. And he said, before I left, he said, I always recommend that. He said, where are you going? I said, Burgatory. He said, oh, I always recommend that. So when I came back, he said, how was it? I said, oh, Burgatory was great. I said, getting there was, I was terrified. He said, that's hairy even for a sighted person. And I thought to myself, why didn't you tell me that when I was telling you I was going there? So none the worse for wear. I went back, watched some football, and that called it a night. And the next morning, 7:30 in the morning, I left, came home to the 8-hour. It was a little bit more than 8 hours coming back. It was a great trip. I talked to a lot of people at the event, and it was worth going for me because unlike some events that we go to where you don't talk to too many people, I don't know how many people I talked to, maybe 2 or 3 dozen people that took information about our state convention, that took information about NFB Newsline and things like that, took information, and I talked to a few people about the National Federation of the Blind helping with the individualized education plans, all sorts of things like that. So that part was great because, again, there were a lot of teachers there that need that information. And again, it was at the Western Pennsylvania School for the Deaf. So it wasn't just Patton is deaf and blind support for students. And again, worth going. I'm glad I went. And I do love Pittsburgh. I do. I don't like their hockey team, however. They are not sending us anything for the auction at our convention. I just got word today that the Flyers are sending us something, a $40 value, autographed picture of someone on their club. So, but again, the Steelers, great. They sent something first thing back in August or so, or July. Haven't heard from the Eagles yet, so fingers crossed we get something from them. Haven't heard from the Sixers, whatnot. Let's move on to the next trip, which was the Blind Travel Foundation fundraiser in New York City. Now, when I said I would go, on my calendar, I didn't have the Pennsylvania Association of Blind Merchants meeting that was that night. And when I realized that the two conflicted, I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm the treasurer of the blind merchants, so it's important that I go to the meeting. And yes, I could miss a meeting if I had to, but I don't want to do that, especially since what I was doing was more on the fun side for me, because it was a fundraiser. I got to see Mike Walsh, who is the executive director, and we've worked closely with the Blind Travel Foundation because I did their website. When I say digital graphics design. I went because what was going on this night was there was one of the travel grant winners from this last round was there to do a concert. He's a pianist, and he was going to do this concert, a mini concert. I mean, it was maybe 45 minutes to an hour. But I got to see Mike. There was food. Got to listen to this guy play, which was awesome. The other thing was he was from Barcelona. Everybody has something to do with Spain except Liz and I going. When I'm on the train was a few minutes late. So I thought, okay, as long as we get under the water, because under the water, there's no connection to anything. The Amtrak Wi-Fi is trash, and there is just no way I was going to be able to join that meeting on the train. But fortunately, I got upstairs, ended up in Moynihan, which is where I wanted to be, and got out to the front at the corner of 8th and 33rd and ordered a rideshare. And I'm watching, and the guy says he's here, and I said, beep your horn. Well, it's New York City. Everybody's beeping their horn. I said, call my name. I'm blind. I'm not going to see you. Please just call my name. He doesn't. He even calls me and said, da-da-da-da-da. I said, I'm on 33rd. You have to see me. If you're on 33rd, you have to see me. He couldn't see me either. And then time ran out and he left. Fortunately, he didn't charge me. Ordered another one. And finally that guy came. And at this point now, I'm on the call as I get into the ride share. And I'm trying to talk to the driver and muting and unmuting and muting and unmuting. And he keeps asking me questions. And then at one point I'm unmuted and he said, do I go to the right or the left? I said, you picked me up at the train station. I'm clearly not from around here. And I don't even know where we were. I said, then I hit mute, and everybody on the call is laughing because they said he doesn't know where he's going. And he made the right choice. He went to the left and dropped me off, and I was good to go. I finished the call partially out on 11th Avenue, and then for a little bit, once we were allowed into the space, and for some reason, I can never be fully present. That wasn't the only rideshare issue, and it was a good time. I was glad I went. Now, I didn't see Jane because Jane was leaving the next morning, early in the morning, to go to Los Angeles for work. And so there was no way she was going to come to that and then go home at 10 o'clock at night to get up and leave her apartment at 3 a.m. to catch her flight to LA at 6. So I didn't see Jane that day. Everything went okay. I got in the rideshare, went back to the train station. I had no trouble. I tried to change my ticket because I got over to the train station. There was still a train before mine that was heading to Philly. And I asked if I could switch. The lady said, oh, it'll be $35. And I said, I started laughing. I said, I didn't pay $35 for my round trip ticket to and from New York. I paid $28. So why would I spend another $35 to go? So I walked around the station. Went into Duane Reade, which is a drugstore chain owned by Walgreens, and got some pretzels and had a Starbucks iced tea and just hung out with the red caps until it was time for me to get on my 11:23 train home. Again, all went well until I got to Philadelphia. Train got in around 1 a.m. I had to use the bathroom, so I went to the bathroom, came out of the bathroom a couple minutes later after this guy who was cleaning the floors in there said, watch out, watch out. Oh, you can see a little. You can see, right? And I held my cane up as I'm stepping through and sweeping back and forth because I can tell there's something on the floor. I didn't know if it was hoses or whatnot. And I just walked past. We couldn't use the urinals because they were closed off for being cleaned, I guess. Went in, came back out. He again stops running the machine that he's using to clean the floor, lets me go past, and I go back out front. I order the ride share at 1:06 a.m. I didn't get into a ride share until 1:53 a.m. First guy who accepts, I text him after he gets within 5 minutes. I said, I'm blind. Please call my name. Here's what I'm wearing. And again, I was wearing I don't remember what color shirt, but I had a blue blazer on and I had jeans on and a flannel shirt because it was a little cooler out and I wasn't sure temperature wise what I would need. So I had a maroon flannel shirt on, which I was complimented by Jane and Liz as well. So he's calling or he's texting saying, I'm here. And I said, well, please call my name out because I'm standing here. And it's not like there's a million cars coming in at this point. It's around 1:15, 1:20. There's that many cars coming and going. And it was a silver colored car, I think, or gray. And I never saw one that color. And I don't know where this guy was, but he wasn't there. And then he cancels. The time expires and he leaves and he cancels. And then I get hit with a cancellation fee, which I fought and immediately won and have already used the credit. I then order another one. Says it'll take around 10 minutes. I know it's now 1:30 in the morning. I get it. But it gets down to a couple of minutes or maybe even a minute, cancels. Order another one. Says it's going to take 10 minutes, 13 minutes, whatever it is. Again, I get it. 1:30 in the morning. Cancels within a minute or two of arriving. Finally, the fourth guy says he's going to show up and does. And I had to wait 5 to 10 minutes. I don't remember what the wait time was. And I asked him, I said, what's the problem? I said, you're the fourth guy. You're the fourth driver. And finally, I'm in a car. I started ordering this at 1:06. And he said, it's a far way to go for the amount of money that you're paying. And that ride was $26 or $28. I don't remember because they were all a little bit different. The first guy that canceled, I thought was 28 or 29. And then the next three I thought were the same, but I don't remember that amount. So he's telling me, and then I started to think back from the guy from Easton saying, okay, well, if you get 40% of it or so, 45% of it really doesn't make sense because I live about a half an hour from the train station. And it was, I think it was raining that night. It was raining that night. And so I get it. But that makes it hard on me. I certainly, if the SEPTA trains were running, I just would have gotten on one of those had I been able to do that. But they don't. They stop running around 11 is the last train out, I think. And that's now, come the beginning of January, they're supposedly going to stop running at 9, which is just unreal. And the whole SEPTA thing, which I mentioned the train was canceled earlier, they have the majority of their trains, their cars are like 50 years old. Not too big of an issue. They've had 5 fires this year with these cars. The last one was at the Crumlin station, right where I usually get off if I take that other line home. If I don't take the Media Wawa line that takes me to Swarthmore, I take this other line, the Wilmington Newark line, which I get off at Crumlin. If I'm going, I get on at Ridley Park, but I get off at Crumlin. It's a little bit closer, and Liz usually picks me up there. So they've had this issue. There's budget issues because Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth doesn't have a budget. So none of the agencies have money. So there's been this whole big thing, and SEPTA's always blaming somebody else. Now they're blaming the federal government for making them inspect these cars that are catching fire. So that's the issue with SEPTA that I probably failed to mention earlier. That was a great trip. I was happy once I got home. I didn't get home until about 2:15, 2:20, something like that. Again, not terribly late for me because I still stayed up a while after that. New York City, for Laugh for Sight, which was 6 days later, I went up on Monday in the morning. I got there early on Monday, got off the train a little after 10. Jane met me at the train station. And she wants to redo her kitchen. Her kitchen is very old. She wants to modernize it and basically get as much cabinet space as she can in her little, I forget what she said. I want to say it's 75 inches by 50 inches, I think is is the entire kitchen. I mean, you may have a table in your house that's bigger than her kitchen. It's tiny, so you have to maximize what you can. And so we went to a place. It was a real. I was happy when we went to this place, and I was happy I could go with her. So we went and did that. Then we went to. She has a pizza place near her called Mama's 2. It's on 105th and Broadway, I think, in between 104 and 105 on Broadway. And we've been there before, and I always want to go there when when we go. And finally, she said, "Well, we can go." When we were making plans, we can go there for lunch and then go to. I think it's called Momoya or something like that. It's a Japanese place we went to for dinner. I'll get to that in a sec. So we did that. Kind of hung out at her place for couple of hours. I was exhausted. I had a horrible night's sleep. I just didn't feel great. Felt great after having the pizza. And then I took a little nap in this chair that Jane has, which came with her apartment. And then we had some other things to do. She wanted to go to a cafe. I forget what they had there, and I don't remember what it's called, but she wanted to go there. It turns out we had walked past it. Went to a Starbucks. I grabbed an iced tea because I was super thirsty. And we made our way to a candy store. And if you follow me on Instagram at David Benj, you'll see Jane in the candy store buying $20 worth of candy. It is all imported candy from all sorts of places, Sweden, Spain, I don't know where else, but I know for sure Sweden is a big influence on this chain, and I don't even know what it's called. If you check out Instagram, you may see a sign in the place that's for what it's called. But the person has opened a few of them in New York, and there's even one now in Philadelphia. And I think Jane said one in Boston. But Jane loves the place, and so she was eating the candy the rest of the night while we were at Laugh for Sight. But after the candy store, we made our way on the subway down to Odyssey on Hudson because there was a Podfest meetup that if I were just going to that, I don't know that I would have gone to New York City for it. But since I was in New York for Laugh for Sight, I thought, oh, well, let's go over. There's a networking session before the event really gets started. I said, well, let's go for the networking session. I'll see who's there. Jane and I went, and I was hoping that some people from 1010 Wins would walk in or whatnot. But as far as I know, they didn't. That's one of the stations I listened to, a news station in New York. Jane and I talked amongst ourselves the entire half hour we were there. I heard a voice that I knew, but she was busy talking to somebody else, so I didn't go over to say hello. We left there and went to the Japanese restaurant, and it was the one restaurant of the 3 or 4 that are in New York that don't take reservations. So we were lucky. We were able to walk right in. We got a seat. We got all sorts of good stuff. Spicy tuna is my favorite, sushi, but we got some other things too. It was really good. And I think with tip, it was even less than $100, which is hard to believe. And then from there, we walked over. That was in Chelsea. And then Laugh for Sight is at Gotham Comedy, which is also in Chelsea. And we went there. We got there a little earlier than normal. I got to see Denise Brown and Angela Ferguson and Barbara Mitchell, who are from Keystone. Angela's from both Keystone and Greater Philly. Barbara Mitchell and Denise Brown are from Greater Philly chapters of the NFB. I said hello to them. I didn't get to say hello to Ed Plumacher, who I saw right before the show started across the room. I didn't see him. Jane saw him. And so it was a fun evening. Jim Gaffigan was there. Rich Voss is there. He's always funny. Bonnie McFarlane and a few other comics. They were all really good. Well, there was one guy, I don't remember his name. I didn't think was as good as the others. But it was a fun night. I got to see Bryan afterwards. Bryan's set was really good. I really enjoyed his set this year. And maybe it's because usually he'll say, does this sound okay? And he'll tell me one of the jokes. So when I hear it, when he's doing it, I already heard it. So it's not quite as funny. But this year I didn't hear any of them beforehand. So it was good. And again, I don't know if that's why or if it was just especially good this year. Talked to Bryan a little bit after, and then Jane and I left because Jane had to get up to go to work the next day. I was going to take the subway with her and get off the subway at Moynihan Train Hall. And she got off with me, and we walked around a little bit. She stayed with me for a bit and then jumped on the subway and went into work. I got on the train, bing, bang, boom, I was home. One thing we did do on our way back, in between Laugh for Sight And her apartment is a place called Salt and Straw. If you've ever been to Disney Springs in Orlando, they have one there. Most of the others are out west. There's a handful of others that are California and a couple other places out west. I absolutely love the ice cream. When Liz and I were in Orlando a couple of years ago for the NFB National Convention, we went there twice. Whenever we go to visit Jane, well, Liz rarely gets to visit Jane. Whenever I go to visit Jane, we usually go there. I absolutely love their ice cream, so we got a flight, it was the perfect amount of ice cream to eat at midnight. Surprisingly, we both fell asleep after eating it because between the chocolate and the sugar, that was questionable. But got on the train, came home the next day, and my hand had been really bothering actually both hands had been really bothering me. So I got to the train station in Swarthmore after getting off in Philadelphia, the Amtrak, and taking SEPTA to Swarthmore. And I debated, am I going to walk home? And my thumb was killing me a couple of times. It seizes sometimes where if you're listening at home, I'm holding my hand up showing my thumb. When I hold it against the rest of my hand, right tight up against it, I can't move it off. So I actually have to take my other hand and pull it off just to get it to move again. It doesn't happen a lot, but it happens more frequently than I would like. So it was kind of like that. It hurt. I thought, am I going to walk home? Someone was coming to the house, I thought, at 1 p.m. And I thought, it's going to be tight. I don't know if I can get home in time. It was roughly a little after 12. I thought, you know what? Let me order the rideshare. I know I'll get there in 7 minutes once the rideshare arrives. And I did get home and bing, bang, boom, that was it. But I felt bad taking the rideshare. It was still cheaper than taking the rideshare from 30th Street in Philadelphia all the way to my house because the train cost me $5.50. The rideshare cost me with tip $10. So there's $15. The cheapest I've ever come home from Philadelphia from 30th Street Station is around $28. So I figured, okay, I still saved a little bit of money. My rideshare bill this month is just unbelievably outrageous. Just outrageous. One thing I forgot to mention, when I got off the train in Philadelphia, coming back from New York the second time, I realized that the very next day I was going to get on this very same train to go to Harrisburg because we had a meeting in Hershey at the Hershey Lodge for next year's convention, even though we haven't had this year's yet. We try to have an announcement ready for when we meet at our convention. So we'll see if we're going to go to the Hershey Lodge. We're waiting on the contract now from that. But took the train out to Hershey, and I really love the lodge. I mean, it was a great place. It's a little more upscale than than what we're used to with the convention, but I hope it works because we've never gone to Hershey before, and it would be a great venue to have. Bunch of restaurants in the facility. There is a small water park that a couple of our members have younger kids, so they'll be able to go to the water park inside the hotel. It's not the main water park at Hershey Park. It's something in the hotel. They have a pool just like this year's place that we're at the Best Western Premier, which is also very nice. Don't get me wrong, but Hershey Lodge was a level above. We met with Cindy at Hershey Lodge. Lynn and I both got a bag of all sorts of Hershey products, which was awesome. Again, check out Instagram and you'll see a picture of it in front of a fireplace, not that close to the fireplace, or of course it would melt. But really like that. And the one thing with my trip to Hershey, when you travel from Philadelphia to Harrisburg and back, there is a disability discount code. It's also good for senior citizens. The code is V819. So if you're going from Philly to Harrisburg or Harrisburg to Philly, use that code and your ticket will be roughly $18. If you book round trip and in one setting, it's $17.82. If you book one way, it is $18.32. So I only booked one way because I wasn't sure what time we'd be done. So I booked the one way. So again, $18.32 to go from Philadelphia to Harrisburg. To go from Harrisburg to Hershey, which is only about a 20-minute ride, about 12 miles, it cost me $19 in rideshare. So that was one of the issues that I brought up to both Cindy from the hotel and with Lynn. If we have a lot of members going to the train station, we've got to figure something out how to get them from the train to the hotel or how to get them from Philly to the hotel. So that's one of the things we're going to have to talk about if we're going to go to Hershey. But and that's not really that big of an issue to me for some of the other things that I've mentioned. But I really hope that we do go to Hershey because it just is a different place. It's a different location and still fairly easy to get to. So that was my traveling, and it's just been a lot. So every week this month, with the exception of the first week up to the first weekend, I've been on an Amtrak train. And when I got off the train in Harrisburg yesterday to go to the hotel, I thought, "Oh, if I go home with Lynn and Ray, this will be the last time I get on a train this month, and an Amtrak train, until I go to the convention, which is only 2 weeks away, so it's not that big a deal. But I've taken so many trains over the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's just unreal. And I'm, again, recording this on Thursday night, the 30th. The last 3 Fridays, I've had something fairly major. I had the Dancing in the Dark event on the 10th. I had a wedding on the 17th. And then on the 24th, I went to a funeral. So tomorrow, even though it's Halloween, it's going to be a lower key kind of day. Now, we're going to be setting up our sound equipment that we're going to be testing for the convention. I have a couple of folks coming over to help with that so we can do a dry run for setting up Zoom and everything. So when we do the convention, we are good to go with the sound system. But it's going to be a lower key, fingers crossed, Friday in October of this year for me, and I'm looking forward to that. So just going to do that and have another contractor coming to the house for something. So I'm looking forward to not running all over the place tomorrow, which is exciting for me. And I do like to travel, don't get me wrong, but it's just been a lot. And I'll have a little bit of downtime from now until, like I said, the convention. Don't worry, I have things planned in Philadelphia next week. The Blind Meetup is doing a thing at Washington Crossing to go through a program that they helped create that is for blind and low vision folks. That's Monday. Tuesday, I'm going to a museum to go through their program to see how it works out. They ask, "Can we take pictures of you doing it?" They can take pictures of me. I don't know if they might want to reserve judgment until they actually see me. But so I have that stuff going on, and there's meetings and things like that, mostly on Zoom. So it'll be a nice, and again, a lot of convention stuff still to be planned in another convention meeting. But that is the jam-packed month that I've had. I hope you have been having a great month of October. Looking forward to turning the page into November. I will really be happy come November 17th, Ziggy's birthday. And I can't wait to give him I can't wait to give him his toy. It is a fish that we bought at LL Bean that has a squeaker in it, but when you bite the squeaker, the tail moves. So that's pretty funny. But that is all I have for this episode 291. And I really wish I could do this more. I hope that once the convention is done, I am back on a regular schedule to recording. But I do appreciate you joining me for this episode. Show notes are available over on the website, iCantCU.com/291, iCantCU.com/291, numerically speaking. And remember, iCantCU sounds like a whole sentence, but it's only 7 characters long. iCantCU.com/291. Please reach out to me on the socials at David Benj, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. I know there's some others. Twitter, X, whatever that's called now. Reach out to me there, or reach out to me at iCantCUpodcast@gmail.com, iCantCUpodcast@gmail.com. Again, thanks for joining me for this episode. Be well, stay safe, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.
Thank you for joining David on this episode of iCantCU. Please subscribe on your favorite platform. Like and comment on this episode on YouTube.